Before we dive into these captivating videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest thrilling tales. Let's begin. If you are watching this video in an Airbnb right now, I need you to stop and check every mirror in your rental. Look closely. If you see a small dark spot where the coating seems worn away, or if the reflection seems even slightly delayed, get out. Get out right now. My hands are shaking as I record this, but people need to know the truth about what we discovered in that Malibu beach house. 3 days ago, I was just like you, thinking I'd scored an amazing last-minute deal on a luxury rental. Now I can't sleep, can't trust any reflection, and can't stop wondering about the USB drive we found with thousands of hours of recorded footage. The police say we're lucky to be alive. They also told us we weren't the first guests to be watched, but we were the first to make it out before he came back. This isn't just another scary story on the internet. This is a warning, because right now, someone else might be checking into that perfect vacation rental, not knowing they're being watched through every mirror in the house. The house looked exactly like the photos when we arrived. A stunning 3-story modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean. There were 4 of us. Me, my best friend Sarah, and our boyfriends, Mike and Tom. The host had left detailed instructions about accessing everything through a smart home system, so we never actually met them in person. At first, we were blown away by the luxurious interior designer furniture, high-end appliances, and those incredible ocean views from every room. But something felt strange. The air inside was heavy, almost stagnant, despite all those windows. And there was this constant feeling of being observed, like eyes following our every move. We brushed it off as paranoia from watching too many horror movies. Sarah even joked about the house being haunted when we couldn't figure out why some doors would close by themselves. If only we'd known then that ghosts were the least of our worries. The weird stuff started small. Items we'd left in one place would somehow end up in another. We'd hear footsteps upstairs when everyone was downstairs. At first, we blamed each other or convinced ourselves we were just forgetful. But then Sarah noticed something about the giant mirror in her bathroom. She was doing her makeup when she realized the reflection seemed slightly delayed, just a fraction of a second, but enough to notice. She called me in to look, and that's when we saw it. A tiny spot where the reflective coating had worn away. Pressing our faces close to the glass, could barely make out a dark space behind it. My heart stopped when Sarah pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. There, in that tiny transparent spot, we saw something that made us both freeze. A small red light, blinking steadily in the darkness. Our hands shaking, we started examining every mirror in the house. 6 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, the hallways, they were everywhere. Using our phone flashlights, we found the same thing behind most of them, camera equipment. But that wasn't even the worst part. Behind the largest mirror in the master bedroom, we discovered a narrow corridor. It ran between the walls, with small platforms at each mirror location. Someone had built a complete surveillance system into the house's structure. On one platform, we found an abandoned notebook. Inside were detailed logs of previous guests, their routines, conversations, and things I can't even bring myself to write about. The most recent entry was from just last week. My blood ran cold when I realized whoever was watching us probably knew we'd found their secret. Following the corridor led us to a locked door in the basement, a part of the house that wasn't shown in any of the listing photos. Mike managed to break the lock, and what we found inside still haunts my nightmares. It was a surveillance command center, dozens of monitors showing live feeds from every room, high-end recording equipment, and hard drives labeled by date going back 3 years. But what terrified us most were the walls. They were covered with photos of previous guests, sleeping, showering, changing clothes. Some faces were circled in red. In the corner, a corkboard displayed what looked like schedules, dates, names, and room numbers. Our names were on the latest schedule. That's when we heard it, the sound of the front door opening upstairs. We barely had time to hide before footsteps descended the basement stairs. Through a crack in the storage boxes, we watched a man enter the room. He wore maintenance coveralls and moved with the confidence of someone who owned the place. He went straight to the monitors, then suddenly froze. He must have noticed the broken lock. "I know you are in here," he called out, his voice chillingly calm. Everyone gets curious eventually. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. He started moving between the storage boxes, getting closer to our hiding spot. That's when Sarah's phone buzzed. She'd forgotten to put it on silent. The man smiled. Found you. What happened next was chaos. Tom threw a hard drive at the man's head, giving us the split second we needed to run. We bolted up the stairs, but the man recovered quickly. He was right behind us, screaming about how we'd ruined everything. The smart home system started malfunctioning. Doors locking and unlocking randomly, lights flashing. He was controlling it all from his phone. We managed to barricade ourselves in the kitchen, but he started flooding the house with gas through the ventilation system. The air was getting thick. Through the window, we could see other houses nearby. It was our only chance. Mike used a chair to break the glass, and we climbed out one by one. I'll never forget the man's face watching us through the window, not angry anymore, but smiling. The police arrived within minutes of our call, but the man was gone. They found evidence of similar setups in 3 other Airbnb properties in the area. The investigation revealed he was a former security systems installer who'd been running this scheme for years. The most terrifying part? He's still out there. The houses were registered under stolen identities, and the surveillance footage was uploaded to encrypted servers they haven't been able to crack. Sometimes, I still wake up in cold sweats, thinking about those monitors, those photos, those schedules. The detective told us we were lucky. Some of the people whose photos were circled in red are still missing. Now, whenever I travel, I check every mirror I see, because you never know who might be watching from the other side. Book now or lose it forever. Those words on my screen nearly cost us our lives. I know what you are thinking. Just another clickbait story about a bad Airbnb experience, right? Trust me, this isn't about a dirty bathroom or a noisy neighbor. This is about how my girlfriend and I accidentally walked into the headquarters of a Russian crime syndicate. Let me take you back to last summer. Sarah and I were planning our dream Miami getaway, mindlessly scrolling through beachfront properties at 2 a.m. when we struck gold. Or so we thought. An exclusive penthouse apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows stretching across every room, a private infinity pool overlooking South Beach, and marble everything. The price? Less than half of what neighboring properties were charging. The host, Michael, had only 2 reviews, both 5 stars, both posted within hours of each other. But hey, everyone starts somewhere, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. That simple booking nearly got us killed. Because Michael wasn't just some guy renting out his luxury apartment. He was something far more sinister. And we were about to discover exactly what happens when you accidentally crash a mobster's safe house. The problem started the moment we arrived at the building. The address led us to a luxury high-rise in South Beach, but something felt off. The security guard at the front desk had no record of our reservation, and when we called Michael, he answered with a thick Russian accent, something that hadn't been apparent in our online communications. He told us to wait outside, and 15 minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled up. 2 men in expensive suits stepped out, neither introducing themselves as Michael. The taller one just handed us a key card and mumbled something about enjoying our stay. That's when I noticed the tattoos on his hands, intricate designs that I'd later learn were common in Russian prison systems. Sarah squeezed my hand as we rode the elevator to the 45th floor. The hallway was eerily quiet, with only one other apartment on the entire floor. When we opened the door, the penthouse looked exactly like the photos, but something was different. There were cameras in every room, not just regular security cameras, but high-end surveillance equipment, and they were all blinking red. We tried to ignore the cameras and settle in, but things kept getting stranger. The Wi-Fi network was named KGB Surveillance Unit 7, which we assumed was someone's idea of a joke. Then Sarah noticed something in the guest book. It was filled with entries, but they were all written in Russian, except for a few words in English. Payment, shipment, and deadline. My heart nearly stopped when I opened a drawer looking for extra towels and found a stack of passports from different countries. They all had different names but showed photos of the same few people. Under the passports was a ledger filled with numbers and codes. Being an accountant, I recognized money laundering patterns immediately. We were standing in what appeared to be the command center of some serious criminal operation. I tried to stay calm, but when I heard heavy footsteps in the hallway and voices speaking Russian, I knew we had to get out of there. Just as we were grabbing our bags, someone started unlocking the door. Without thinking, I pulled Sarah into the master bedroom closet. Through a crack in the door, we watched 3 men enter the apartment. They were talking rapidly in Russian, but one phrase in English made my blood run cold. The Americans are late with the payment. They spread papers across the dining table and pulled out laptops. From our hiding spot, we could see maps of the city with locations marked in red. One of the men made a phone call, and even though I couldn't understand the words, his tone was menacing. Sarah was trembling beside me, and I was certain they could hear our hearts pounding. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, they finally left. We waited another 10 minutes before daring to move, using every ounce of self-control not to run screaming from the building. We knew we couldn't just walk out the front door. The security guard had seen us come in, and those men could return any minute. Sarah remembered seeing a service elevator during our arrival, accessed through a door near the emergency stairs. It was our best shot at leaving unnoticed. We gathered our things silently, careful not to disturb anything that might reveal we'd discovered their operation. That's when I heard the elevator ding. Footsteps approached multiple people. With no time to reach the service elevator, we ducked into the bathroom. The voices were closer now, and I could smell cigar smoke. Sarah pointed to the window. We were 45 floors up, but there was a narrow maintenance ledge running along the building's exterior. It was insane, but we were out of options. The bathroom door handle started to turn just as I helped Sarah through the window. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold on. The ledge was barely a foot wide. The wind at that height was intense, making every step a battle for balance. We had to shimmy sideways, pressing ourselves against the building's glass exterior. Sarah was ahead of me, inching toward the corner where we hoped to find another window or access point. That's when we heard shouting from inside the bathroom. They discovered we were gone. Through the glass, I could see men rushing through the apartment, speaking urgently into phones. We were only halfway to the corner when a window 2 panels ahead of us began to open. Sarah froze. I held my breath. A hand emerged, holding a cigarette. If the smoker looked left, we'd be spotted instantly. The next 60 seconds were the longest of my life. Finally, the hand flicked the cigarette away and withdrew. We continued our death-defying journey until we reached a window that opened into a mercifully empty stairwell. Getting into the stairwell was just the beginning. We could hear voices echoing both above and below us. They were searching the building. We started racing down the stairs, trying to move quickly but quietly. Every door we passed could have revealed one of them. Around the 20th floor, we heard the stairwell door above us slam open. Heavy footsteps started descending. Sarah pointed to a door marked Maintenance Level 2. We slipped through it into a maze of utility corridors. The service elevator was somewhere on this level, but we were completely turned around. The sound of voices was getting closer. We ducked behind some pipes as 2 men in suits walked past, speaking rapidly into radios. When they were gone, we finally spotted the service elevator. It needed a key card to operate, but in a stroke of luck, the maintenance key was still in the lock. We took it straight to the basement parking garage. We ran to our car and drove straight to the police station, but that's when things got even more complicated. The detective who took our statement got very quiet when we mentioned the address. He made some calls and suddenly the FBI was involved. They told us we'd stumbled into the middle of an ongoing investigation into an Eastern European crime syndicate. The penthouse was under surveillance, and we'd accidentally blown their operation wide open. We were placed in protective custody for 3 weeks while they tracked down the main players. Turns out, Michael was actually Mikhail Petrov, a high-ranking member of a Russian crime family. The penthouse was their base of operations for a massive money laundering scheme. Today, most of them are in prison, but some are still out there. That's why I am using a voice changer for this video. Even now, 2 years later, I still check every room for cameras, and I never, ever book vacation rentals anymore. Some deals really are too good to be true. It's been 3 months since I stayed in room 127, and I still wake up screaming every night. I never believed in the supernatural until that Airbnb booking. The listing looked perfect. A Victorian mansion converted into luxury apartments, all 5-star reviews, and a price too good to be true. Now I know why it was so cheap. I am making this video because people need to know what happened there, and because the police still don't believe me. Maybe you won't either. But everything I am about to tell you is real. I have the scars to prove it. The first warning sign came when I checked my booking confirmation. The host's profile picture kept glitching. distorting into something inhuman. I thought it was just a bug. Then I noticed all the reviews were posted exactly 7 days apart, every single one. And they all mentioned the unique antique mirror in the bedroom. If only I'd paid more attention to these details. If only I'd noticed how every reviewer's profile went completely inactive after posting about room 127. The mansion loomed over me as I pulled up at sunset. Victorian architecture had never looked so menacing. The front garden was immaculate, too perfect, like a dollhouse waiting for its next victim. The property manager, Mrs. Chen, met me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She kept wringing her hands as she led me inside, her knuckles white with tension. "Room 127 is special," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It picks its guests carefully." Before I could ask what she meant, she'd thrust the key into my hand and hurried away. The hallway to my room seemed to stretch endlessly, the vintage wallpaper pattern shifting in my peripheral vision. The brass numbers on the door, 127, were crooked, no matter how many times I tried to straighten them. The room itself was beautiful, frozen in time like a perfectly preserved museum piece. And there it was, the antique mirror, its ornate frame covered in symbols I'd never seen before. As I unpacked, I could have sworn my reflection moved a fraction of a second too late. That first night, the temperature dropped to near freezing, though it was summer outside. My phone died despite being fully charged, and the Wi-Fi wouldn't connect. I tried to sleep, but the mirror kept drawing my attention. In the darkness, it seemed to pulse with a faint, sickly light. At exactly 3:27 a.m., I woke to the sound of whispers. They weren't coming from the mirror, they were coming from behind it. Scratching sounds followed, like fingernails dragging across the wall. I switched on every light in the room, but the bulbs flickered and dimmed. In the mirror's reflection, I saw something move in the corner of the room. When I turned to look, nothing was there. But in the mirror, a dark figure stood directly behind me, its face a twisted mass of shadows. I ran to the door, but the handle wouldn't turn. The whispers grew louder, forming words I couldn't quite understand. The figure in the mirror stepped closer, and I felt icy fingers brush against my neck. The next morning, I convinced myself it was just a nightmare, but the bruises on my neck told a different story. I spent hours researching the mansion's history online. The original owner, Edgar Blackwood, had been obsessed with the occult. He'd commissioned 7 mirrors from a mysterious craftsman in 1887. 6 were destroyed in a fire, except for the one in room 127. Old newspaper articles revealed a pattern. Every 7 years, a guest would vanish without a trace. The only clue? Their final social media posts were always reviews of room 127. The most recent disappearance was exactly 7 years ago. I dug deeper and found something terrifying. In every photo taken in room 127, the mirror showed reflections of things that weren't there. Dark figures, distorted faces, and always, 7 days before someone disappeared. I'd already been there for 2 days. Things got worse each night. The whispers turned into screams. My belongings would move when I wasn't looking. The mirror began to bleed a thick, black liquid that vanished by morning. I tried to leave, but every time I packed my bags, something would stop me. My car wouldn't start. The Uber drivers couldn't find the address. The local taxi company had no record of the street existing. On the 4th night, I woke to find all my photos on my phone had changed. Every single one showed the same thing. That thing from the mirror standing behind me, getting closer in each picture. In the most recent photos, its face was almost visible, a nightmare of twisted features and endless darkness. Mrs. Chen stopped responding to my messages. The other guests in the mansion seemed to vanish. Walking the halls, I heard only my own footsteps and the endless whispers from behind the walls. On the 5th day, I found a hidden compartment behind the mirror. Inside was Edgar Blackwood's diary. The entries described a ritual to gain immortality using the mirrors as gateways. But something went wrong. The mirrors didn't grant eternal life. They trapped souls instead. Each victim's essence would be consumed over 7 days, feeding whatever force Blackwood had awakened. The diary's final pages were frantic scribbles about the gathering. Every 7 years, the force needed 7 souls to maintain its grip on our world. I was to be the 7th soul of this cycle. The previous 6 victims' reviews suddenly made terrible sense. They were warnings, desperately hidden in plain sight. That night, my reflection stopped mimicking my movements entirely. It just stood there, smiling, as more dark figures emerged from the mirror's depths. 6 days in, I realized I had one chance. Blackwood's diary mentioned a counter-ritual, a way to trap the entity back in the mirror realm. It had to be performed at exactly 3:27 a.m., using the blood of someone it had marked. The bruises on my neck had spread, forming symbols matching those on the mirror's frame. I spent my final hours gathering what I needed: 7 candles, salt, and my own blood. As 3:27 approached, the entity began its attack. The room fell into total darkness. Dozens of hands reached for me from the mirror. The whispers became a deafening chorus of screams. I felt my soul being pulled toward the glass, but I was ready. I spoke the words from the diary, each syllable burning my throat like acid. The mirror cracked, and reality itself seemed to splinter. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital. The mansion had vanished, completely vanished. Where it once stood was an empty lot, overgrown with decades of weeds. The police found me collapsed on the sidewalk, clutching Blackwood's diary. But when they opened it, the pages were blank. Sometimes I catch glimpses of that thing in reflective surfaces. Windows, phone screens, puddles after rain. It's still out there waiting. The bruises never fully healed. They fade and return every 7 days. And now, as I finish this video, I have to warn you. If you ever see a suspiciously cheap Airbnb listing for room 127, with perfect reviews posted exactly 7 days apart, don't book it. Don't even look at the photos, because in every reflection, in every shadow, that malevolent force is watching, and it's always, always hungry for the next 7 souls. I never believed in ghosts until I spent a night at Buckhorn Baths Motel. That's what I keep telling myself as I write this from my hospital bed, my hands still shaking from what I experienced just 48 hours ago. I am a travel vlogger who specializes in staying at haunted Airbnbs, but nothing could have prepared me for what lurks within those old walls. 7 spirits, they say. 7 tortured souls trapped in time. I thought it was just another local legend, just another marketing gimmick. God, I wish I had been right. The doctors say the marks on my neck will heal. But how do you heal from memories that refuse to fade? It started as a simple overnight stay for my channel. You know the type, spooky location, night vision cameras, the usual setup. But what my cameras captured that night, I've watched the footage 100 times, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. But the screams, those weren't sound effects. And the shadows, they weren't tricks of light. The GPS led me down a dusty road just as the sun was setting, painting the desert sky in shades of blood red. The Buckhorn Baths Motel stood there like a decaying giant, its neon sign flickering weakly against the darkening sky. The place had been converted into an Airbnb, but time hadn't been kind to it. Paint peeled from the walls like dead skin, and the windows. I swear they were watching me as I pulled into the empty parking lot. The property manager had left the key in a lockbox, meaning I was completely alone. The moment I stepped out of my car, the desert heat vanished, replaced by an unnatural chill that cut straight to my bones. My equipment felt heavier than usual as I lugged it toward room 13. Of course, it had to be room 13. The key stuck in the lock, and as I jiggled it, I heard what sounded like whispers coming from inside. I told myself it was just the wind, but deep down I knew better. Wind doesn't whisper your name. Setting up my cameras should have taken 20 minutes tops. Instead, it took nearly 2 hours because my equipment kept malfunctioning. Batteries I'd just charged would suddenly die. Cameras would turn themselves off, or worse, turn themselves on when I hadn't touched them. But the real trouble started when I checked the bathroom. The mirror was covered in steam despite the bone-dry air. As I wiped it clear, I saw something that still haunts my dreams. Behind my reflection stood a woman in a 1950s bathing suit, her skin blue-tinged, her eyes milky white. I spun around, but there was nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, words were being written in the steam. You shouldn't have come. My hands were trembling as I grabbed my camera to document it, but in the viewfinder, I saw something even worse. The woman wasn't alone anymore. 6 more figures had joined her, their faces twisted in expressions of agony. With my heart pounding, I did what any sensible person would do. I Googled the motel's history. What I found made my blood run cold. Buckhorn Baths wasn't just a motel. It was built around natural hot springs that supposedly had healing properties. But in 1953, 7 people died here in one night. The official report claimed it was carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater. But the articles I found told a different story. The bodies were found in impossible positions. Some were locked in rooms from the inside. Others were discovered in the springs, despite being strong swimmers. And every single victim had the same expression of pure terror frozen on their face. The most disturbing detail, all 7 victims had checked in alone, in room 13, exactly like me. I slammed my laptop shut, but not before catching a reflection in the screen. 7 dark shapes standing behind me. The sun had set completely now, and the room had become impossibly cold. My camera's night vision picked up strange orbs floating through the air, but that was just the beginning. The television turned itself on, playing nothing but static, but within the white noise, I could hear voices calling out. They were telling their stories, all 7 of them, speaking over each other in a horrifying cacophony. I could make out fragments: trapped, pain, help us, join us. The voices grew louder until they were screaming, and the room began to shake. Picture frames flew off the walls. The bed levitated 3 feet off the ground. My equipment went crazy, recording impossible readings. And through it all, those 7 spirits circled me like vultures, getting closer with each rotation. I tried to run, door wouldn't budge. The windows were sealed shut. I was trapped, just like they had been. What happened next still feels like a nightmare. One by one, the spirits passed through my body, each possession bringing a new wave of terror. With each spirit, I experienced their final moments. I felt the icy water filling my lungs as the woman in the bathing suit drowned in the springs. I felt the crushing weight of a falling beam that killed the maintenance man. I lived through each of their deaths, 7 times over. My body contorted in ways that shouldn't be possible. I spoke in voices that weren't my own. The camera caught it all. My eyes rolling back, my skin changing color, my body floating above the bed. But the worst part? I was conscious through all of it. I could feel them fighting for control, using my voice to tell their stories, using my hands to recreate their deaths. The room temperature dropped so low that my breath came out as fog. As midnight approached, the true horror of Buckhorn Baths revealed itself. These 7 spirits weren't just haunting the motel. They were trapped here by something darker, something ancient that lived in the springs beneath the building. The spirits weren't trying to harm me. They were trying to warn me. Through their possessed whispers, I learned the truth. The springs weren't healing waters. They were a gateway. Every decade, it needed 7 souls to keep the portal sealed. The 1953 deaths weren't an accident. They were a sacrifice. And now, exactly 70 years later, 7 more. The spirits had been trying to prevent another sacrifice, but their warnings came too late. The floor began to crack, and from the fissures came a darkness deeper than night. The spirits screamed in unison as it reached for me with shadowy tendrils. I don't remember how I escaped. The security footage later showed me crashing through the window at 3:33 a.m., though I have no memory of breaking the glass. I was found 2 miles away in the desert, babbling about spirits and portals. The doctors treated my cuts and bruises, but they can't explain the handprints burned into my skin, 7 distinct patterns, each from a different decade. My camera survived, though most of the footage is distorted. But in the few clear frames, you can see them, 7 figures standing in a protective circle around me as that darkness tried to claim its prize. They saved me, but at what cost? The spirits are still there waiting. The portal still hungers, and sometimes late at night I can still hear them whispering. They tell me it's not over. They say I am marked now, connected to them and to that place. 7 spirits still linger at Buckhorn Baths Motel, but something far worse lurks beneath its foundations, and it's only a matter of time before it hungers again.